أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to touch on a few topics all related to seeking knowledge and building ourselves. As you all already know, the Prophet ﷺ described seeking for knowledge, al-ilm faridatun ala kulli muslim, that the search for knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. An obligation. Knowledge is one of those things without which you can't be anything. If from a time a person is born you deprive them of knowledge, it's very difficult for them to do anything right. Even without knowledge. Some of the knowledge that we are expected to acquire is an individual obligation and no one can do it on your behalf, and it's called a fardun. And there's the kind of knowledge that is required for the running of society, an obligation without which society will fall into darura, society will fall into crisis. That type of knowledge is called fardu kifaya. When we go to school, we are taught in Islamic studies a lot of what belongs to the fardu ain. But the professional subjects you study, when you say you want to also be an engineer or a doctor or an agriculturalist or any role in society, knowledge becomes a fardu kifaya. Why a fardu kifaya? Because we need some people to play certain roles in society, which those roles are not played, we all get into trouble. People die when certain professions do not work. For example, if those who are involved in providing electricity decided they were going to stop working in that field for the next month, would anybody die? Think. Would anybody die if we had no more electricity? Unless you don't visit a hospital, you would say no. Unless you needed money to buy food from your ATM machine. People would die within 24 hours. People who are on life support. Blood banks. Diagnosis of what's your illness. To say you're going to have no electricity in a modern city for a month, people will die. And comes a fard to provide that electricity. Society continues to develop, these things that are obligations on society become more important. If people didn't clean garbage, would anybody die? All you need to do is wait for a month, no garbage collection, and we will start hearing words like cholera and typhoid, epidemics that would kill more people than a military would kill. And so it becomes fard to provide those professions to ensure we don't get into that crisis. But in Qawaid al-Fiqhiyah, in one of the maxims of Islamic jurisprudence, the scholars say whatever is a prerequisite for a fard itself treated as a fard. In other words, if studying medicine is a prerequisite for being a doctor, then if being a doctor is a fardu kifaya, the study of medicine is also a fardu kifaya. And if studying chemistry and physics and biology are prerequisites to certain professions, they themselves become fardu kifaya. Because if we said no more teaching of chemistry, no more teaching of mathematics, what would happen within a few years? We would have more people dying because we don't have competent performers of those responsibilities that are fardu kifaya. And so it is important that we do not look at our subjects as if when I'm studying Hifdhul Quran, that's Islamic. When I'm doing Islamic studies and studying fiqh and tawheed and tahdhib, that is something Islam requires of me. And these other chemistry, etc., these are dunya. From an Islamic point of view, knowledge is classified as useful or not useful. Ilman nafi'an, if it's useful knowledge, and we have dua, Allahumma rzuqna ilman nafi'an, Allah increase us in ilm that is nafi'an. And I'm saying this so that we take all our studies with seriousness. And if you get a low mark in English or maths or chemistry, you should feel just as guilty as if you got a low mark in your Tawheed studies or your Tajweed or any other subject. They are all fard. And why Fardu Kifaya is Fardu Ain, the individual responsibility is a superior obligation, it doesn't remove the fard of the subjects. The Prophet ﷺ said, the best among you are those who are most useful to others. Most useful to others. Unfortunately, knowledge in many fields has an expiration date. It's just like bananas. You can buy them fresh. If you don't use them, in a few days, nobody wants it. If you study any of the technical subjects, within a few years, your knowledge of a particular computer program or application is outdated, just like the bananas. If you graduate with a PhD, in less than 2 years, somebody has surpassed your PhD. We have reached a time when you can't stop learning. It's like riding a bicycle. If you stop pedaling, you fall. If you're paddling or rowing in a boat or a canoe, it is when you stop paddling, then you gradually slow down, and then you move with the flow like dead fish. The search for knowledge from the cradle to the grave is truer and more true today than it ever was. My father and his parents, that generation of what for many of us would be our grandparents, could finish with a first degree and retire comfortably. Gone are those days when a first degree is enough. And just as you upgrade the applications on your phone and you look for the latest version of an operating system, you have to upgrade yourself. You have to update yourself in every field. Otherwise, you become like the dead fish. You go with the flow. You are no more relevant. Your ilm is no more nafi'an. It's no more useful. And if you spend your time with garbage going into you, it's just garbage coming out. And so, every time we try to upgrade any application, anything around us, we must ask ourselves, are we ourselves getting outdated? What are we doing to upgrade ourselves? Intellectually, spiritually, socially, physically. Otherwise, you live life as if you're on a roundabout, motion but no progress. And after 5 years, you're really just where you are, just older, that's all. There was a story of a farmer who had a goose. And one day he noticed that the goose had laid a golden egg. He thought this might be some practical joke. He took the golden egg, tested it, it looked real. He got a friend who was a goldsmith, have a look at it. He said it's real, and he said he was ready to buy the golden egg. And the man said, for how much? He said, if you don't mind, I'll give you 100,000 rands. Okay, have it. And he got the money. Next day the goose lays another golden egg, and he goes and sells it. The following, the goose laid another golden egg. This man is getting richer. He wants another farm. He wants to start thinking of buying a car, expanding his house. His dreams are getting bigger. And as the weeks go by, he's getting more impatient with the goose that is laying only one golden egg a day. And he comes by the goose and, hangs around, looks under, lifts the goose, no golden egg. Comes back after 10-15 minutes. Finally, quack, quack, there's a golden egg. And he goes and sells it. And he comes back really impatient. He wakes up at night just to see whether another golden egg was laid. As he's waiting, he gets a brilliant idea. Why wait for golden eggs? I know where the next golden egg is. It's inside the goose. So he gets a knife, lops off the head of the goose, opens it, and takes his last golden egg. And many of us would say, silly farmer. And we would have said, he was not good at managing his gift of the goose that laid the golden eggs. If you had a goose that laid golden eggs, how would you handle that goose? Someone said, the first thing I'll do if I have a goose that lays golden eggs is build a high wire electrical fence around it for security reasons. Don't want anybody to steal my goose. I'll start taking care of the goose. I'll not be giving it cheap food, chicken feed. I'll start feeding it with muesli and Quaker oats and cornflakes. I'll build a swimming pool for the goose. Plasma screen TV. Just don't put National Geographic. Air conditioning. You take care of the goose that lays the golden eggs if you want more golden eggs. But if you're only concerned about golden eggs and not the welfare of the goose, you get what you get. Would it be good to get the goose a friend? A husband? Maybe after a while you'll actually leave some of the golden eggs for the goose to sit on it. Maybe you get a golden gosling. Golden egg is valuable as you are valuable. And for many of you, you're the golden eggs of your families. And you have hatched to become geese. And when you start working and delivering valuable service, people will pay you for the golden eggs you are giving. Whether the golden egg is as small as that of a pigeon or as big as that of a goose. The quality of what you are able to offer is determined by how well you have taken care of your own welfare. Your knowledge, your physical health, your social relations, your growth, your humility, your commitment. The more valuable you are to society, the more society is ready to pay you for the kind of golden eggs you are giving. But you must be able to build yourself, improve the quality of what you have to offer. As Muslims, something that should be an innate part of us is an unquenching thirst to learn more, to be more. Curiosity. Ask. Allah tells us, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask people who know, if you don't. Ask questions about anything. There is nothing unholy about curiosity and asking questions, if your purpose is to seek useful knowledge. Creatures that were as holy and as pure as angels in the eyes of Allah, they asked Allah questions when they didn't understand why Allah was going to create man on earth. And so when Allah tells the angels, إِنِّي جَائِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, they ask, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيُفْسِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. Ya Allah, are you going to put on earth those who would cause corruption and shed blood? Allah didn't criticize them for questions. When he tells Mary, you're going to have a child, she asks a question, Doesn't make sense. How can I have a child? وَلَمْ يَمْسَسْنِي بَشَرًا. Nobody has, no man has touched me. Ibrahim alayhi salam just couldn't wrap his head around this issue of bringing the dead back to life. And he asks Allah, how? And Allah asks him, don't you have faith? He says, no, I believe. But لِيَطْمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي, just to satisfy my own curiosity, the questionings in my heart. And Allah acknowledges and validates and gives him a miracle that satisfies his curiosity. People during the time of Jahiliyyah had hundreds of questions for the Prophet. And Allah mentions these in the Quran. وَقَالُوا, this and this and this and this. وَقَالُوا, they say, or they ask. And Allah responds, قُل, tell them this and that. That Allah responds to human curiosity. The problem sometimes with asking questions is if you're asking useless questions. If you're asking questions just to start a fight. If you're asking questions just to make somebody know and you know more, where the ego is the one asking the questions. But if it's your conscience wanting truth, ask away. The Quran is لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, Allah says. All the ayat and lessons that Allah has given humanity, both in creation and in revelation, are لِقَوْمِ يَعْقِلُونَ, لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, for people who would reflect, for people who would think. To be sensible and reasonable is so important that in Sharia, one of the maqasid of Sharia is hifdhul aql, the preservation and the protection of the intellect. So as to protect the intellect, Allah has prohibited us from intoxicants or anything that will mess your head up. And the search for knowledge has been made a fard, an obligation. We must think. Abu Hamid al-Ghazali said that the relationship between reason and revelation is similar to the relationship between the eyes and light. To say you are going to use your reasoning without the aid of revelation is like somebody saying, I'm going to use my eyes in the dark. You will find the furniture with your shin. And to say you are going to use revelation but no reasoning, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali said, it's like moving around in broad daylight but you are blind or your eyes are shut. Both reasoning and revelation are gifts from Allah to help us in understanding His guidance. And in this search for truth, doubt, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali says, is a step in our growth in faith. When you hear a question that makes you doubt, that is good. Because hopefully your curiosity will help give you yaqeen. It will help search for knowledge that gives you more certainty. What is wrong is for you to have doubts and you don't search for answers. That is the problem. Because then your doubts get compounded and they add to each other and you get more confused. Whenever you have any doubts about anything to do with Islam, to do with anything, questions from atheists, questions from one Muslim, questions from Christians, questions from any angle, what you read in science, what you read, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. If you don't have the answer, look for people who have the answers. And if you hear an answer that doesn't make sense, just put it on the shelf and keep searching for it. I've had questions that I have been holding on to for over 20 years before, alhamdulillah, I met somebody who could answer. You don't allow doubt to override certainty. Al-yaqeen la yazulu bi-shak. Certainty is not overruled by doubt. The Chinese say that the reasons why the rivers continue to flow to the sea, you would have thought that the sea and the oceans contain enough water that water should flow the other way around. But waters continue, whether in streams and rivers, to flow to the sea. Is because the sea with all its might stays below the rivers. It is humble. And that's where its power comes from. But both water, even stones, move away from mountains because of their arrogance. If you want to be seen by people, if you want recognition, a lot of good people will move away from you. A lot of Allah's rizq will move away from you. But if you are humble, if you are sincere, if you are curious, people of knowledge will share knowledge with people who are humble. The moment you show curiosity to people who have knowledge, they want to help you. But the moment they see arrogance, they start cutting down the length of their sentences. So let's embrace humility as actually a strength, not a weakness. Allah's rizq, just like streams and rivers, flows towards people who are humble. And never say, because I wasn't good at something before, I will never be good at it. A man and his son went to a zoo, and they saw all the big animals all boxed up in their cages. There's a cage for the lion, there's a cage for the cheetah, a cage for the rhino. Everyone had his own fence around him. But he noticed one huge African elephant, not in a cage. And he got a bit worried. He looked carefully, isn't there a rope tying this elephant? And he saw a rope that was really nearly string. He saw a piece of rope that was no thicker than my little finger. And he got scared. All this elephant needs to do is just a gentle kick with its leg, and that rope will be broken. If it goes on the rampage, we're in trouble. He looks for the zookeeper. Excuse me, yeah, I've been to other zoos before. They use solid chains, huge ropes as thick as my fist to tie elephants this big. I see you just have a string, very thin rope for him. Aren't you afraid if he gets on the rampage, something may happen? The zookeeper said, no, nothing to worry about. You see, this elephant came here as a calf, as a baby elephant. And when it was still a baby, we tied it with a rope no bigger than the one you see. And when it was still a baby, it did all it could to break that rope. It tried and tried, but because it was still small, it couldn't break the rope. And it gave up. And it stopped trying. And even though it was growing bigger and bigger and stronger, it still had the belief that it wouldn't be able to break the rope. And so long as that elephant has that belief, we have nothing to worry about. Sometimes our report cards saying you're not good at this, you're not good at that, a comment from a friend becomes the rope you use to tie yourself. And you stop trying. I'm not good at maths. Even my dad wasn't good at maths. And that one wasn't good at maths. And you use all of that to just tie yourself down. And whatever rizq Allah puts around you, you've tied yourself from trying to benefit from it. Why? Because you stop trying. Never give up on something good. If it's useful, struggle. Strive. And it becomes easier. And Allah makes it available. You find many people who have succeeded in different fields. Ask them, what did you study and what are you doing now? And sometimes what they are doing now has nearly nothing to do with what they studied. And some of what they are doing now, they honestly believe they would never be good at it, but they tried and they got good at it. If other human beings can learn something, who are you to say I can't learn? And so let us strive. In any area where we believe this will be useful knowledge, we strive to excel in it. And in our behavior, in the way we relate with people, let us always work on being better human beings. Better human beings. One of the most important qualities of the Prophet ﷺ, besides his God consciousness, was that he was a Nabiyur Rahmah. He was a Rahmah lil Alameen. He was a source of compassion. What is compassion? Compassion means kindness, it means mercy. But when you are trying to be compassionate to a victim of injustice, then seeking justice against the perpetrator is your way of showing compassion to the victim. It is your way of having rahmah on society, that this injustice will not repeat itself. And so rahmah encapsulates justice, every form of justice. And we must grow in our sincerity and in our desire to be more just as human beings. And whatever happens around you, always try and with justice and compassion. Consult others and seek wisdom. And be useful. There was a man who was sitting by a well, talking to his friend, and he was stroking a cat. As he was talking with his friend, stroking his cat, a butterfly just fluttered by. And the cat jumped and caught the butterfly, but it fell inside the well. And it started to drown. And the man who was sitting there looked at the cat, looked at his friend, wasn't sure what to do. He put his hand in to bring the cat out, and the cat scratched him badly. He brought his hand out and it was bleeding. And his friend said, "Be careful." He looked at the cat struggling, and he put his hand in again to bring the cat out. The cat scratched him even more. His hand started bleeding more profusely, and his friend, "Man, just leave the guy alone. Qadarullah." The man stopped. He looked at his cat. He looked at his friend. He looked at his hand. And then he frowned. And he put his hand in the water again, caught the cat's foot. The cat scratched him, sunk his teeth into the man's hand. The man just pulled the cat out and brought him out. And it just ran off. And he looked at his hand, and then he smiled. And then his friend said to him, "So what have you tried to prove?" And the man said to his friend, "It is in the nature of the cat to scratch when it is scared. It is in my nature to try and show compassion. It seems to be in your nature to just stand there and look, and I will not let your nature or the nature of the cat change my nature." For our young ones and older ones, as you move through life, you will meet a lot of cats that will scratch you. Some will be members of your family, some will be friends, some would be complete strangers, some you don't even know where the scratch came from. Do not let any scratch change your nature. Work towards building who you are. Be conscious of Allah and prepare for the hereafter. Allah tells us, "Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu taqullah." O you who have attained faith, be conscious of Allah. Wal tanzur nafsum ma qaddamat ligadin. And let every soul prepare for the hereafter. Wattaqullah inna Allaha khabirun bima ta'malun. Be conscious of Allah, for Allah is well aware of all that you do. In conclusion, let us really continue to be curious, ask questions, search for knowledge, be better, do better, be useful. Have compassion, forgive, and don't let any scratch in this dunya change your nature from that of taqwa, of sincerity, and staying on the straight path. May Allah continue to keep us all on His straight path. May Allah forgive us where we've made mistakes. May Allah continue to guide us all aright. If there are any mistakes in what I've said, I pray Allah to forgive me and to continue to guide us aright. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
We would like to say shukran to Sheikh Nuruddeen for his inspiring